afternoon. Look at your beautiful faces. I'm so excited to see you all. I am Risa Rollins. I have the privilege of wearing several hats today. I get to be, we're gonna start with the first one, sorry y'all, the mama of Nettie and the ensemble Young Adam of this beautiful, beautiful production of The Color Purple. I also have the distinct honor of being a board member for COCA, this beautiful facility in which you sit and who has mounted this phenomenal production, and Forward Through Ferguson, who is helping to bring this conversation to you today. So for me, it's beautiful when there is an opportunity for all of the things that I love and I'm absolutely passionate about, for them to collide. And that's what this is for me, and thank you for sharing this space and this time with us. We think about the intersection of arts and justice, like what is that and what does that mean and how do those things go together? And I spend a lot of time interrogating those things. I don't have a lot of time. And so that valuable, precious commodity I have, I'm very selective on how I choose to spend it. And when I think of these two organizations, they are worth my time, my talent, and my treasure, because I really consider them to be institutions that have saved our lives in my household. I think back to 2014 when Mike Brown was murdered, and I'm feeling so helpless and powerless, and trying to figure out what to do. And for me, watching something and not feeling like I was participating or doing anything to actively come against the things that were threatening my well-being and my very life and that of my children, because I had a son who was close in age, right? Forward Through Ferguson, well, the Ferguson Commission stood up and Forward Through Ferguson was birthed as a response. So we didn't have to be powerless or helpless, but we could partner, link arms, and do something. Fast forward to the Stockley verdict. And I remember Nadia calling me sobbing because they were talking about it and had a community conversation at school. And she was supposed to be at COCA that evening for classes. And she was like, should I go home or should I go to COCA? And I was like, no, we don't go home. We go to COCA and we keep dancing and we keep singing and we keep being joyful, because our joy is our resistance, right? And it's an opportunity for us to elevate and to tell stories that allow us to be fully and authentically who we are and to create the world that we want to be a part of. That is one that is not defined or described by, your access to opportunity is not defined or described by who you are, how you show up in a room, and things that you have no control over, right? And so being able to sit with how powerful the arts and justice are, and how that intersection has such a pathway for the community that I want to live in, the world I want to be a part of. Anytime I get to bring those things together and then celebrate these beautiful, talented young people on stage, it's everything. So I'm going to stop talking and invite some of the artists into the space via video. Sorry, you see it's call time, so they can't come and chat with us personally, but they did take some time and share the video with you.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Clay, and I am playing Mr. in The Color Purple at COCA. And the role that art plays in combating racial division is super duper important to me, because I believe that it is a sense of community that we don't get a chance to see on a day-to-day basis, whether it be through TV, film, stage, music, dance, and etc. We get a chance to amplify and emphasize what it truly means to get rid of the black and white feature and look more into a gray area entry, while being able to exalt and enjoy what it truly means to really push forward in the arts.
Hi, I'm Nadia Rollins and I'm playing Nettie, and I think the arts plays an important role in healing racial division because it amplifies minority voices and tells stories about minorities that we don't normally get to hear on a day-to-day basis. And so I think it helps teach and educate other communities and being more tolerant.
Hi, my name is Stefan Griffin, and I will be playing Harpo in The Color Purple. The arts have a unique way of bringing people of various backgrounds together. in a manner that's somewhat difficult to describe, but easily seen. Being involved, whether it's through dance, music, performance, singing, etc., allows one to be placed on a platform with a multitude of people who are very much like-minded. This not only allows collaboration of different backgrounds, cultures, and personalities to come together and work in unison towards a common goal, but also invites the creation of new ideas that promote positivity and bonds amongst these individuals that are seldom broken. Unity amongst the community is exactly what's needed in society to combat the divide that has progressively become more prevalent. The idea of understanding that though we may not be as the same as the next person, we're all human and are able to work together to find a common ground. This is exactly what the arts promotes to those who are in it, and what we all strive to give back to those who aren't.
Awesome. So we've gotten to hear from the artists, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce, I'm not going to introduce, they're going to introduce themselves, our beautiful panelists. And I'd like for you to state who you are and your affiliation and all of this beautiful thing. And if you could share one phrase or moment, kind of reflecting on what the artists were talking about, of why is this intersection of arts and justice so very important? Whomever wants to start.
Thank you, Risa. Thank you so much. And I don't know if y'all heard me at first, but I was complimenting how dope we look. We look like a singing group. So I really hope somebody took a picture, because we're doing the coordination right now. This was not planned, but period. Okay. So I'm Fabra. My pronouns are she and her. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the lead racial equity catalyst at Ferguson. Been in that role for about 5 years, but been a part of the community of Ferguson since about 2018. So it's been some years now. Wear many hats in the community in addition to that, but for the purposes of today, that's what I will share. I also, I was a COCA kid when I was young, and I went to U-City schools, graduated from U-City High School, and even up through undergrad at St. Louis University, I was still learning the arts at COCA up until I graduated from St. Louis University about 15 years ago. So have a deep history with COCA, really appreciate this institution, and yeah, just excited for the conversation.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne Foster. I am Dr. Dwayne Foster. Made my first student loan payment on Monday. So I am the director of this production of The Color Purple. This is my second production with COCA Summer Musicals. And Memphis was in 2016. Just 2 years after Ferguson, so that has a lot of context in it of itself. And later on, we'll find out why I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But art is the transfiguration of tragedy. And art is the transfiguration of tragedy. And we'll talk about that later.
I don't even know if I can talk after that. Woo! I am Indigo Sams. I'm the president and CEO of COCA. And this is my second rodeo here at COCA. I started as a wee 19-year-old intern that found a place that embraced me. I was only a year into moving to St. Louis. I'm originally from California. And when I think about how the arts intersect, I grew up in a house of people who are artists, singers, visual artists, musicians. My babysitters were legendary poets and I think that when I think about how those things intersect, for me, it's not an intersection, it is a through line. It's the period, it's the sentence, it's the run-on sentence. Because my breath is that intersection. The arts is the way to get through to peace for me.
I'm going last. I don't know how I feel about that. So, good evening. My name is Anissa McCaskill. I'm Executive Director of Forward Through Ferguson. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm not from St. Louis, but I was a choir kid. High school, college, even into graduate school, and music has always been a background. My mother said that I sang before I spoke. But I used to work for the city, University City, so COCA and what COCA means to the community has always been something that I've been aware of since I pretty much moved to St. Louis. So I'm gonna project for a second. In terms of the intersection of the arts and social justice, I think when we look at movement, there's always been art. Anytime we have looked at whether it is a positive movement or whether it is a movement where the oppressed are rising up, the artists have always been front and center to motivate, but to also document. And so when we look at art and we look at social justice, it's, as Indigo said, there's a through line. They're always connected because at times it's the artists who keep the others motivated, and at other times it's those who are doing movement work, those who are the boots on the ground, who inspire and cause new art to be created.
Thank you. Thanks to each of you. And I want to shift the question a little bit because we're in a really pivotal moment right now. Oh, for so very many reasons. But 10 years ago, Mike Brown Jr. was killed in Ferguson. What did that moment mean to you? And how did it impact the work that you do with the community today?
I'll go since we started on the other side last time. So I think I've spoken individually with some of you about it. So that person taking picture after picture right there is my son, who is 20, so he was 10 at the time. And I was working at a Black-led organization, and I was dealing with the state of Missouri and all the things that they were telling us I must do as a contractor. And all I could think was, that could have been my child. And so when Michael was murdered, because we can say he was killed, but we know that he was murdered. When Michael was murdered, I looked at Micah, my child, and I knew that I had to shift how I moved professionally and how I moved personally. I've always been someone who's been at the table in spaces where no one else has been in, and I've always been able to speak truth to power. But the way that I spoke truth to power, the forcefulness of it, the bluntness of it, and calling a thing, and challenging at the table is what I took away from Michael's murder. Because if it could happen to him, I always knew it could happen to my child, but it made it abundantly clear when Michael was murdered that my Micah could be next, that I could be next. And working in municipal government previously and then after Michael was murdered, night and day difference in how I moved in those spaces and engaged with law enforcement as well as my peers. So I'm a quiet person, but I learned not to be quiet and in some instances to agitate.
My my day job is an educator. I am an assistant principal at Mason Elementary. 2014, I was fine arts coordinator for the Normandy Schools Collaborative. In 2007, I was a speech and drama teacher at Normandy Middle School, and Michael Brown was my student. He was in Raisin in the Sun in the 7th grade. his senior year, he was in our alternative school program. And so I was also charged to get him through music appreciation. So I created a makeshift studio and put him in charge of it. And so a lot of his rough cuts that he put out on Spotify and everything came out of that studio. So this is near and dear to my heart, the day that it happened. He had just graduated summer school 3 days prior, and so his classmates were pretty much blowing up my email, my district email, and I didn't know what was going on. And lo and behold, I found myself down on that street. Couldn't get on at that point, but to see the images of what was going on. So when I talk about the transfiguration and tragedy, I'm looking at Michael Brown, and I'm looking at how art during that time served different roles. It was, people needed to have, ignorance needed to be, what's the word they use now? They use the word deadened. We needed to kill off ignorance. And art was so tangible. And when Phil Woodmore, who's here at COCA, myself and some other creators got together, there was a creation of a project called Antigone and Ferguson. And when I say the transformative power of the arts, we're at Boston at a college, and I'm talking to people about Michael Brown doing Raisin in the Sun, learning how to do the Charleston for another one of our projects, humanizing him. Because to them, to the media, he was this big bear who deserved to be gunned down. So the arts in that realm served as a powerful tool to kill off the ignorance and to enlighten people that he was just a normal young man who not only had dreams and aspirations, but they were centered around the arts. So I take all of that and I'm trying not to go into many different places, but I'm transported to earlier today when I'm in the back of the theater and Imara is singing, "I'm Here." I'm literally breathing for her because I feel like she was struggling. And we do that as artists. I know Chris is here now, he doesn't. His dancers are on stage. We breathe for them. We try to pace them. And we try to emulate what we want to come out through them. And I know that when 2014 happened, Opera Theater came to Normandy, several other organizations came to Normandy, and we did this big performance where everyone came and said, hey, we care about the community, and all this wonderful stuff was going on. But after that, it started to dwindle. And I will say this, many of the art organizations did keep up with the charge, but many of the outside organizations that came in, they came in, did what they needed to do, and left. COCA, I will never forget, we needed another place to do Antigone and Ferguson, and we ended up doing it at COCA. It was jam-packed. It was a phenomenal evening because we had a Q&A and so many people who needed to talk from different areas of St. Louis. And it was a safe space, and that's what it provided. So, sorry I was going on, but the arts provide a safe space, a safe place for people to be real, for people to be completely and totally transparent without consequence. So I'm thankful. I'm very thankful for the life that Michael led, but I'm also thankful for what his life means as we move on and through this transfiguration, through the resurrection of what he really wanted, and that was to be known. And he wanted to be known. He really wanted to be known.
Yeah, Miss Cal and Mike Sr., his parents often share this story. They would say, you know, Mike, he said the world is gonna know my name. You know, he didn't know the ways in which the world would know his name, but in fact we did, and we do, and we still say his name to this day. So in 2014, I was teaching, and I mentioned earlier I do have an arts background as well, but decided to go on hiatus from professionally doing arts, but instead pouring into students, into young people. So I was also in school trying to earn my master's in education, and that day was on my way to class at UMSL, and the traffic was so bad that I couldn't even get to class because people were starting to mobilize up to North County. And what arts and activism and all this meant for me was also a shift. You know, the school where I was teaching, it was I would say, an affluent school. And sure, it was diverse racially, but socioeconomically, it was not diverse at all. And it somehow became my job to explain to the other teachers and the other, you know, faculty and staff, traffic was so bad and why those people were so mad and why the doctors were taking a long time to come and get their kids at the end of the day. Like, what's going on over there? You know, it kind of became my job to explain it, and I accepted that job. And, you know, I had always known, because my parents were academics, and I don't think they necessarily saw themselves as activists, but, you know, one of my earliest memories was going to the first Martin Luther King Day parade that we ever had in St. Louis. And they were like, this is a moment for us, like the fight and the walk towards liberation for Black people and the oppressed is not over. And so I remember their words from like 1993 or what have you, and I'm like, all right, I can use my area of influence to try to help other people understand why these issues are important. And no, I might not be a CEO, no, I might not be the president of the Urban League, but there's enough people that know me and that trust me and believe what I say. And when I tell them that Mike Brown Jr. was a regular, normal young man who did not deserve to die, and not only that, like, our tax dollars shouldn't have paid for it, that change could happen over time. I had the audacity to believe that things could change, and I still do. And so for my students, you know, they were so young, we couldn't really talk about everything that was happening, but they knew that they were uncomfortable. And so when they wanted to be hugged, I held them. When they wanted to do art projects, we did art projects, and we painted their little brown hands and their little peach hands, and we talked about how special it is to be yourself and to be in a community. And so, yeah, that's what the arts meant to me. And, you know, at the end of the day, I could never, I have a son now, a little Black boy, and I just can only imagine the pain that, you know, his parents still feel. But what I do know is that they're also, and we'll probably talk about this more later, like continuing to use their areas of influence to not only keep Mike Jr.'s legacy alive, but also to help other young Black people in St. Louis and other, you know, young people of, you know, low income status. They run a lot of programs that are self-funded, and people don't even know that his parents have their own nonprofit organizations. And good people like us, you know, one of the most philanthropic regions in the country, we know how to be generous with what we have. And so one of the calls to action, in addition to helping for the Ferguson continue to sustain, is to also directly donate to Mike Brown Jr.'s parents' organizations.
I'm gonna be honest. when I heard about Mike Brown, the first thing that came to my mind was, damn, not another one. I grew in Oakland, California in the 80s. Many Black people were gunned down. So when this happened, I went, not another one. But by 2014, I had my own Black son. And not only that, but I worked for an organization that my job was to take care of brown kids. And so I remember kids coming straight home, had heard about all what had occurred that day, and came directly from school to the center, which I worked. And so we had 300 brown babies that we had to be prepared to take on. And my team, we all took a moment to breathe and cry, felt for that young man, and then opened our arms for all the young people that came in that door that day. And like we talked about, being able to explain to young people what was happening to their brother was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I think following the days when, I still don't like this word, the unrest was happening. What disturbed me the most is all the money that was being poured into St. Louis, into Ferguson, but not into the people. It was the most upsetting thing for me. And being a part of an organization, a nonprofit organization, and I have to say, I commend my president at that time, who is a Black man. People were calling us, and he said, no, that money shouldn't be coming to us. You need to send that where it needs to be. Because every nonprofit around St. Louis had their hands open and had his picture was showing up for the moment, but weren't really in it for the long haul. And it was sad. It was really, really sad to watch that occur and to watch all the resources deplete and that community be left as it was, still trying to heal from all the disruption that that murder left. I think that when I think about it today, one of the things that got us through those days with the babies every day is allowing young people to figure it out. And a lot of them used the arts to do that. They put on music, they danced, they sang to each other, they held each other. And I think, often we take advantage of the fact that art, it really is our humanity. And often we sell it, we give it away without really thinking about what it really means. But at times of discord and confusion, isn't it interesting how music just pours out of you, how the art just pours out of you, and you don't even have to call it, it just is. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks to each of you. Switch your hats for a second. Because I remember what was really powerful for me was visual and like the stories that were being told and who was controlling the narrative. And I would look at all these double news reports from all over the world, right? And they would talk about like these, I'm not gonna use the words they used to talk about these babies, but when I looked in the faces of those babies, I saw my baby. And the thing that was infuriating to me were the stories that were unchecked, right? That were being told about our babies. And so I'm flipping the script a little bit and I just came up with another question, y'all. Because I feel like a common throughput between both organizations that I think is profoundly impactful. Y'all do storytelling very well. And you do storytelling well for a number of reasons. One, you create space for people to tell their own stories and own their own narratives. And you create space for a diversity of stories in different ways, in different medium. Like one of the things that I'm most moved by this beautiful piece of art you're about to see, is the storytelling. Like it's all of your senses are engaged. Like the story is told from, it's something for everybody, and you gonna get it because there's so many ways that this beautiful story is unfolding before you. And so I want you to reflect for a moment, if you would, on the transcendence, right? And the power of storytelling. And if you would, share some of your wisdom on what the role of storytelling is in the context of our collective, like this is not a moment, it's a movement, right, towards justice and equity in our region and beyond.
Well, I think storytelling is also a tangible tool for accountability. At the end of the day, what are we ultimately hoping to accomplish by doing the policy work that we do, mobilizing communities, etc.? I think for the Ferguson specifically, a 189 call to action, 300-page plan, it's not accessible to the general public, right? Like there's very few people who will actually crack open a 300-page policy brief. But there's plenty of people who will go on social media, see a video about the 911 calling system and go, oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, I didn't know that could be fixed. Oh, I didn't know that that was actually a solution. So sometimes I think some of the agitation from the other side of people who are fine with the status quo and love it the way it is, it's kind of hard to argue when we can prove with real stories of real humans who actually have experienced these things, entire communities at a systemic level. It just gets harder and harder to make excuses about why things can't change. And so, some people, the public safety system, it's just broken. It's like, no, the public safety system is not broken. The public safety system is working exactly the way that it is programmed to run. It is working exactly the way it is programmed to exist for its history, context, and purpose. The thing is, we're now in 2024, and there's an entire society of people who, many of which, if you ask the average person, they would say, of course I value safety. Of course I want to live somewhere that's safe. Of course I want to be able to trust my neighbors and, go do what I'd like to do with my life. But our investments don't match our values collectively as a society. And so what storytelling does is help us put up a mirror and say, hey, I thought we said that this thing was our value, but this is what we're currently investing in. And so here are some policy solutions so that things can change. And so if the 300 policy brief is not y'all jam, we gonna put some 90-second stories out that got some nice colors on it, that got some people saying some things, and it's gonna be in the voices of the people using terms that people can understand. And that is the other side of community organizing. Community organizing is not just turning out voters. It's not just going and knocking on doors. It's also sharing the real stories of the people who are failed by the status quo of the system.
I also think there's a component of getting to the griot. And we know that culturally the griot was the sage, that was the person that you got the history from. And so they weren't giving an academic discourse on the history and what happened and why it happened and why we are the way that we are. The griot told the story. And so what I love about Forward Through Ferguson is they tell the story, but they also do it in such a way that the person is centered, the issue is centered, and as Faber said, it's done in such a way, the Transforming 911, which is our most recent study, literally has a one-page cartoon that can tell you what is in this greater document that makes you want to go back to the document. And as the mother of an animation major, that thrills me because I'm raising someone who I'm trying to teach that his art is not separate from who he is and that he can use it for the greater good. And to see that in practice and to see people stop at one of our tables who typically would not read a study or anything breaking down any type of statistics and grab that document and become engaged and then motivated to move forward and to challenge why the status quo is the status quo and to state that it does not have to be as it always was is huge. But I go back to the griot and I go back to this is what is in our cultural DNA. This is a component of art always intersecting in change and documenting history. And so I just think that we are continuing that tradition, but in a new way.
I'm going to piggyback on that because you said griot, I was going back to the whole concept. I went to Morehouse College and it was founded upon the principles of teaching Black men to become teachers or preachers, because those were the sages in the community, education and religion. And as an educator, I think that we are probably the most essential storytellers today for many reasons. I believe that storytelling is somewhat the clarion call for the flaws in differentiated instruction. And what I mean by that is that you have to be able to reach all types of learners. So many people don't know that injustices are out there because they don't know how to recognize it. And because they need it visually, some of them need it audially. There are so many different ways to get the message out, but people, it feels like people are walking around deaf or blind to the injustices. And so it takes the storytelling component, whether it's on a stage or whether it's in an administration office, when you're getting ready for the school year, how you're going to roll out instruction, yes, but how are you going to work within a community such as mine that is very diverse and still be able to get Black and brown children to work along non-Black and brown children and to get non-Black and brown children to have empathy towards some of the struggles that they are having. Just the other day, we were looking at our baseline data from last year, and the lower basic remained the same. And no one in the room, all these intelligent educators, talked about poverty and trauma, talked about injustice, talked about those things that we knew were keeping these kids from moving from below basic. And so it's essential. When you said storytelling, of course, as an artist, I'm going to think about opening the book and reading to kids. But storytelling is how I move. Storytelling is when I put my hand up in a meeting and really push back when it needs to be pushed back, because so many of us don't push back when we need to push back. And when we need the answers, when we need the direction, and when we need the doors open, and it's not about getting answers and getting justice, it's really about recognizing that there is an injustice, because somebody needs to step up and stepped in. You know, when Jesse Jackson was floating around and Al Sharpton, all the young people on Facebook, we need some new people, we tired of them, all that, but where are they? And that's because, yeah, right. But that's because media has done such a great job. Facebook has done such a great job. TikTok is doing a great job in deafening and blinding people to the injustices that are still out here. And what's so ironic is that you have all this pseudo art happening on TikTok when art is also the answer of how to get that message through. And I guarantee you, anything that gets the message through is usually banned on TikTok. It's usually banned on Instagram. So we have to come up with ways of getting the message out. And it's not to incite anything. It's not to cause an unrest or whatever they called it. You know, it's so interesting in the media. But it is really to reach those who need other ways than just reading a newspaper. Different learners need different ways of understanding when injustice exists.
And that accountability is for everyone. Even the people that we like, even the elected officials that we like, that we voted for, that we want to re-elect.
Accountability.
The accountability is for everyone. You ran on these policies. You ran on what you promised to do for the people. You ran on saying that you would dedicate your time and resource to these measures. Yes, I like you. Yes, I think you're a good person. And are you doing your job to serve the people? It's for everybody. So no matter who folks decide to go out and vote for, use your influence to make sure that they're doing their job, no matter who's in office. Because the reality is that the 2025 plan was drafted in 1973. So this is generational work. Okay.
And for clarity, this is not DEI.
Ooh, say that one more time.
This is not DEI work. This is anti-racist systems change work. It is generational, just like 2025 plan is generational. The Forward Through Ferguson dream came out of the Ferguson Commission, which recognized that we are generationally traumatized. You know, if you go down to St. Louis, downtown, people who look like me were sold on those steps of the old courthouse. And so we know that racism is built into the DNA and is interwoven into every single system and every single organization of authority in St. Louis, including the government, but also our educational systems. And if it's like that here in the Midwest, which everyone calls flyover country, we know that that's true for America. And if it's true for America, we know that this entire country is traumatized. And it's not enough to say we will be diverse, that we will have equity, because how do you have equity when the system is broken? And how do you include by putting a Band-Aid over it? That means that the system actually has to be deconstructed and remade. And so we're not talking about DEI, we're talking about systems change.
That's right. And so, of course, systems change doesn't happen in a 20-minute conversation. So how do you continue to engage and to remain involved? Because what I'm not going to do is stand between you and that opening number, because you know it's that. So how I will end this conversation is to ask our esteemed panelists to answer the question that I hear. Do you hear it? I hear it. How do we learn more? How do we continue to stay involved and engage in this conversation with these organizations? And that's how we'll end.
So for one, I will say, I think you all are understanding that COCA moves a little bit differently than some other arts organizations in the area. And so I would urge you to trust your babies with them and understanding what that will do with their world vision. And so thank you for this space, because one of the things that happened when I first was introduced to Indigo via Zoom is while we talked about this, we also talked about the joy. of our Blackness and the joy of what change could mean for the generations that follow us and how dedicated we are to that. So I just want to say thank you for allowing this space. So that's one thing, because we're talking about art and the intersection of art and the cognizant understanding of how art can influence change. I think we have a place where our children can get that meaning and really have it ingrained in them, as this mom has told me over and over again has done for her family. In terms of Forward Through Ferguson, forwardthroughferguson.org, that's a good start. 189 calls to action, but there are real ways of engagement. FABRA is very, very humble, but we have a racial equity capacity building component to what we do that I would put on par with anybody, anything, because again, it is not DEI. It is literally looking at what are the intrinsic things that hold individuals and organizations back and allowing them to do that examination and then actually create a plan for change, personally as well as organizationally. So follow us on social media, get on a roundtable, get involved and get mobilized. I do want to highlight that we have a huge Angelversary coming up at the beginning of August. And so for in this moment, we are actually supporting Michael Brown Sr. and Chosen for Change. And there are a number of things starting really on the 1st of August, going all the way through the 11th. There's a walk, there are some community activities happening. Some of you in this space have already signed up for it, and so I thank you for that. But do not settle for the status quo. I'll say it again, forwardthroughferguson.org. Our social media handle is STL Change. If you follow us, if you become engaged with us, you definitely will see a number of different things. Right now we have the Honest Elections Coalition that we are building. We are a part of Defund, Re-envision, and Transform, and it is just that, because we know that there's something intrinsically wrong with all of our resources are going toward punishment and not engagement in means that will allow our young people to have a positive future as opposed to one where they're locked behind bars. There are things that can be done in terms of the resources that we have. We also are working, and you probably saw it drop and saw it on the news, the prosecutor organizing table, which I want to be clear started before anybody was running for any office that they're currently in. Whether or not people participated when they were asked to participate, we can't address that. But the prosecutor organizing table, it's prosecutorwatchstl.org is the report. We just dropped a report on the changes or lack of change in St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office regarding how the progressive prosecutor has handled that position. We will also be providing a report on the St. Louis City Prosecutor's Office using data from the previous prosecutor as well as the new prosecutor, and that will drop in the fall. So there are a number of different ways, but I promise you that if you read it, it's going to be different than anything you've ever read. It'll look differently, and it'll allow you to have the tools necessary to really move forward and to make informed decisions and to challenge others in their thinking and how they move forward.
We are so out of time. The back of your programs have a QR code to connect with COCA. The inside flap in the back of your program have several QR codes to connect with different things related to FTF. So it's in there. It's in your program. Open your program. Use the QR code, and you can connect with these two organizations.
Follow STL Change.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here.